Her constituents deserve a Scottish Government that matches her dedication. Mr. Speaker, for our part, we've delivered record funding settlement. We're investing £280 million in Pride in Place across 14 Scottish communities. We've secured shipbuilding on the Clyde for over a decade and just announced an AI growth zone in Lanarkshire. The choice, Mr. Speaker, is clear. A third decade of failure under the SNP or real change for Scotland under Anas Sarwar.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Baden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The whole House will be disgusted by the latest revelations about Jeffrey Epstein. All of us want to see his victims get justice. But the political decision to appoint Epstein's close associate, Peter Mandelson, as Britain's ambassador to Washington goes to the very heart of this Prime Minister's judgment. When he made that appointment, was he aware that Mandelson had continued his friendship even after Epstein's conviction for child prostitution?
Simple question. Mr. Speaker, let me start where I must with the victims of Epstein, and all of our thoughts are with them. Can I also say our thoughts are with all those who lost jobs, savings and livelihoods in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crash. To learn that there was a cabinet minister leaking sensitive information at the height of the response to the 2008 crash is beyond infuriating. And I am as angry as the public and any member of this House. Mandelson betrayed our country, our Parliament and my party. Mr. Speaker, he lied repeatedly to my team when asked about his relationship with Epstein before and during his tenure as ambassador. I regret appointing him. If I knew then what I know now, he would never have been anywhere near government. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the Cabinet Secretary, with my support, took the decision to refer material to the police. And there is now a criminal investigation. I've instructed my team to draft legislation to strip Mandelson of his title and wider legislation to remove disgraced peers. And this morning, I've agreed with His Majesty the King that Mandelson should be removed from the list of Privy Councillors on grounds that he's brought the reputation of the Privy Council into disrepute.
Mr. Speaker, I asked the Prime Minister a very specific question. Did he know that Mandelson had continued his friendship with Epstein after the conviction? He says if he knew then what he knows now, but he did know. In January 2024, a journalist from the Financial Times informed the Prime Minister that Mandelson had stayed in Epstein's house even after that conviction for child prostitution. So did the Prime Minister conveniently forget this fact, or did he decide it was a risk worth taking?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as the House will expect, we went through a process. There was a due diligence exercise, and then there was security vetting by the security services. What was not known was the depth, the sheer depth and extent of the relationship. He lied about that to everyone for years. And new information was published in September, showing the relationship was materially different to what we'd been led to believe. When the new information came to light, I sacked him. But we did go through a due diligence exercise. The points that are being put to me were dealt with within that exercise. In response to the humble address this afternoon, I intend to make sure that all of the material is published. Mr. Speaker, the only exemptions are national security, if it prejudice national security. My first duty is obviously to keep this country safe. And when we drafted humble addresses, we always put an exemption for national security. But also anything that will prejudice international relations. Mr. Speaker, you in the House will appreciate that in the course of discussions country to country, there are very sensitive issues of security, intelligence and trade which cannot be disclosed without compromising the relationship between the two countries or a third country. Mr. Speaker, so that I can be totally open with the House, I should also disclose that the Metropolitan Police have been in touch with my office this morning to raise issues about anything that would prejudice their investigations. We're in discussion with them about that, and I hope to be able to update the House, but I do think I should make that clear to the House at this point, because those discussions are ongoing.
Shall I clear that up?
I'm going to come to the humble address in a moment, but the Prime Minister cannot blame the process. He did know it was on Google. If the Conservative Research Department could find this information out, why couldn't Number 10? On the 10th of September, when we knew this, I asked him at that dispatch box, he gave Mandelson his full confidence at that dispatch box, not once, but twice. He only sacked him after pressure from us. I am asking the Prime Minister something very specific, not about the generalities of the full extent. Can the Prime Minister tell us, did the official security vetting he received mention Mandelson's ongoing relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein?
So clear. Prime Minister.
Yes, it did. As a result, various questions were put to him. I intend to disclose to this House all of the national security, prejudice to international relations on one side. I want to make sure this House sees the full documentation, so it will see for itself the extent to which time and time again Mandelson completely misrepresented the extent of his relationship with Epstein and lied throughout the process, including in response to the due diligence.
Mr. Speaker, I think it is shocking what the Prime Minister has just said. How can he stand up there saying that he knew, but he just asked Peter Mandelson if the security vetting was true or false? This is a man who had been sacked from Cabinet twice already for unethical behaviour. That is absolutely shocking. And that is why, later today, my party will call on the government to release all documents relating to Mandelson's appointment, not just the ones the Prime Minister wants us to see. Because this government is trying to sabotage that release with an amendment to let him choose what we see, the man who appointed Mandelson in the first place. Labour MPs now have to decide if they want to be accessories to his cover-up. Can the Prime Minister guarantee that he won't remove the whip if they refuse to vote for his whitewash amendment?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the first exemption is in relation to anything that could compromise national security. That is not a small matter, and many members on the benches opposite will know precisely why that needs to be in the exemption. When we were drafting humble addresses, when we were sitting over there, we always made sure that exemption was in, because we knew how important it was to the then government. I don't think I've seen a humble address without that in, because and just to be clear, to vote to release something that would prejudice national security is wrong in principle. The second exemption is in relation to things that would prejudice international relations. There will be discussions about security and intelligence and trade, which are highly sensitive to the two countries involved and to third countries. Well, they have to ask themselves whether they want to vote to prejudice our national security. I don't think they do. I don't think, in fairness, that they do. But can I reassure the House, Mr. Speaker? Let me reassure the House that the process for deciding what falls into those categories will not be a political process. It will be led by the Cabinet Secretary, supported by government legal teams. So they will be looking at the question of prejudice. They will be making that decision. The only additional thing I just want to put before the House, because there was a discussion this morning with the Metropolitan Police, is that we are in discussions with them about any material that they're concerned will prejudice their investigation. We're at an early stage of that discussion, but I didn't want to have the House not know that that discussion is going on.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is talking about national security. The national security issue was appointing Mandelson in the first place. And what he has said about the humble address is a red herring. To those Labour MPs who were not there in the last Parliament, let me tell them, humble addresses already exempt genuine national security. This is not about national security, this is about his job security. His amendment lets him withhold anything to do with international relations. But this whole appointment is to do with international relations. So if they're voting for it, they are voting for the cover-up. If the Prime Minister is serious about national security concerns, then he should ask the Intelligence and Security Committee to decide which documents should be released. Will he commit to doing so here and now?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've set out the process. It won't be a political process. It will be led by the Cabinet Secretary, supported by the government legal teams. But I'm pleased that she, I think, now accepts that at least the first exemption that we've written in to the amendment, the petition, is the right amendment in relation to prejudice national security. But she and others behind her will understand that because of the breadth of what's asked for, and we're doing everything we can to make sure this is fully transparent and disclosed, but she and those behind her will understand from their own experience in government the sensitivity of information about security and intelligence and trade relations that are inevitably caught in exchanges of the nature that have been asked for. And it is right that anything that prejudices, not touches on, prejudices international relations is protected within the disclosure.
If that was really the case, then he wouldn't mind if the ISC had a look. And let's be clear, he says the Cabinet Secretary makes it non-political, but that doesn't make it independent. What we want is an independent look. The ISC is independent. The Cabinet Secretary works for him. We know that there will be a cover-up because this implicates the Prime Minister and his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, a protege of Peter Mandelson. The Prime Minister chose to inject Mandelson's poison into the heart of his government on the advice of Morgan McSweeney. His catastrophic lack of judgment, telling us now that he did know, has harmed the special relationship. It has endangered national security. It's not the humble address, it's him. It's compromised our diplomacy, and it has embarrassed our nation. After all of this, does he have the same full confidence in Morgan McSweeney that he had in Peter Mandelson?
Prime Minister.
Morgan McSweeney is an essential part of my team. He helped me change the Labour Party and win an election. Of course I have confidence in him. But, Mr. Speaker, whatever is slung across this dispatch box, I don't think it's right for the Cabinet Secretary to be denigrated in that way and to suggest that he would be involved in a cover-up. There's the politics that comes over the dispatch boxes, but I honestly don't think it's right to impugn the Cabinet Secretary in that way. And I suspect in their heart of hearts, many on those benches would agree. Mr. Speaker, I'm as angry as anyone about what Mandelson has been up to. The disclosures that have been made this week of him passing sensitive information at the height of the response to the 2008 financial crash is utterly shocking and appalling. He's betrayed our country. He's lied repeatedly. He's responsible for a litany of deceit. But this moment demands not just anger, but action. And that's why we've moved quickly, referring material to the police, publishing legislation so we can remove titles from disgraced politicians, and stripping Mandelson of his Privy Councillorship. That is what the public expect, and that is what we will do.
Libens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every month, people across our constituencies are injured by illegal e-bikes being ridden at 30, 40 and 50 miles per hour through our town centres and parks. But for every illegal e-bike that the police seize and crush, another 10 hit our streets because they are too freely available to buy. That's why Cumbria's Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner and 28 other police commissioners across the UK are now backing my bill, which would ban the sale of illegal e-bikes. Will the Prime Minister set out what action the government will take to protect the public and ban the sale of these monster bikes?
Prime Minister.
Can I pay tribute to my honourable friend? She's a tireless campaigner to stop these antisocial, dangerous bikes terrorising communities. Our crime and policing bill means police can seize bikes without issuing a warning and destroy them. And product safety law means authorities have the powers to intervene to stop the sale of unsafe e-bikes. But I share her determination to get these bikes off our streets.
Sir Ed Davey, Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank you and the Prime Minister for your responses to my tribute to Jim Wallace on Monday and urge the whole House to read the wonderful tributes made to Jim in the other place yesterday. Mr. Speaker, I've been thinking how it must feel for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein and their families, hearing more and more stories of how rich, powerful men were currying favour with a paedophile sex trafficker, such as Peter Mandelson, sending government secrets to help Epstein enrich himself further. Seeing Mandelson made ambassador to the United States, even after his links to Epstein had been extensively reported by both the Financial Times and Channel 4 News. So can the Prime Minister tell us, given he now admits he knew about those links, before he gave such an important job to one of Epstein's closest friends, did he think at all about Epstein's victims?
Mr. Speaker, we looked at the material. There was a process. There was then, as he will understand, there was then a security vetting exercise as well. And that's why I started by saying all of our thoughts are with the victims of Epstein. He is right at the beginning of his question to express anger at the material that has recently come out in relation to sensitive information in the aftermath of the 2008 crash. And that is why yesterday, working with the Cabinet Secretary, we referred a material to the police, which has now led to the criminal investigation that is going to follow.
Mr. Speaker, I think the victims of Jeffrey Epstein deserve far better than that. They deserve Peter Mandelson not being appointed in the first place. We don't even know the full extent of the British establishment's involvement in his appalling crimes, or how many British girls and young women were trafficked by him. So we need a full public inquiry, both to get justice for the victims and to protect our national security. Mr. Speaker, the Polish government think Epstein may have been spying for Vladimir Putin. Is the Prime Minister concerned that Peter Mandelson may have been leaking state secrets, not just to a paedophile American financier, but also a Russian agent?
Well, Mr. Speaker, he talks of a public inquiry. Obviously, the focus now has to be on the criminal investigation which has started. As he knows, that investigation will go wherever the evidence leads it, and I've made it absolutely clear that the government will cooperate, as he would expect, with that criminal investigation wherever it goes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the news that Bristol East will be getting another 3 breakfast clubs.
If you're a UK homeowner and your current windows and doors are older than 5 years old, like this and this, then you could be eligible.
The photographs may be embarrassing, but the emails are devastating. Tonight, the Metropolitan Police said they had launched an investigation into a 72-year-old man, a former government minister, for misconduct in public office. That man is, of course, Peter Mandelson, and his former colleagues are appalled.
I removed Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the US very shortly after being appointed as Foreign Secretary. There's clearly been a lot of information that just was not known, and these revelations, for me as someone who was in the Treasury at the time of the financial crisis, I find truly shocking.
Peter Mandelson was business secretary during the financial crisis when he's alleged to have leaked market-sensitive information to Jeffrey Epstein. His old boss, Gordon Brown, has already contacted the police about what he called an inexcusable and unpatriotic act. Amongst the emails Mandelson allegedly sent to Epstein were a briefing for Gordon Brown on the sale of government assets. What saleable assets, asks Epstein. Land, property, I guess, comes the reply. There was confirmation of the EU's €500 billion bailout, should be announced tonight, Mandelson appears to have written. And also advance notice of Gordon Brown's resignation as Prime Minister. Finally got him to go today, Mandelson appears to boast, around 9 hours before this highly market-sensitive information was made public. The problem in all of this for the current Prime Minister is that he appointed Mandelson ambassador to Washington on the advice of his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney.
It's a national embarrassment that Peter Mandelson, the close friend of a notorious paedophile, was appointed British ambassador above many better and qualified candidates. And that is why we're forcing this rare parliamentary mechanism, forcing the government. We want to know what Morgan McSweeney knew and did, and most importantly, what the Prime Minister knew and why all of this was waved away.
And it's not just the opposition asking questions.
There's been lots of suggestions that McSweeney was the one that has pushed for Mandelson to become the ambassador who's been protecting him. So I think there needs to be a level of investigation in terms of why this was allowed to happen.
This afternoon, Mandelson's retirement was announced in the House of Lords.
The Clerk of the Parliament has today received notification from Lord Mandelson of his intention to retire from the House, effective from 4th February.
But the government is also working on a new law to strip him of his title altogether. Peter Mandelson resigned from government in both 2001 and 1998 after relationships with wealthy businessmen got him into trouble. But this time, the trouble is a lot more serious.
And Carl joins me now. Carl, I mean, a police investigation is always serious. The government clearly giving information to the police. What's the kind of legal bar for this to go further?
Well, there are quite a few of them, Tom. Look, in the first instance, the police have to believe they've got the evidence for a realistic prospect of prosecution. And in this case, that means things like knowing what all those redactions are from the US Department of Justice. We know that a lot of the emails were going from Epstein to Mandelson, but we don't have proof that the replies were from Mandelson's account. So they'll want to see those. After that, they've got to be able to show that this is in the public interest. I think if they've got the evidence, that will be an easier hurdle to clear, because the idea of a senior government minister, in effect the deputy prime minister at the time, leaking information to a financier in the US who was, for some of this period, actually serving a prison sentence, that's an incredibly serious accusation. So if they get that far and it goes to trial, then a jury would have to decide whether or not there had been an abuse of power by Peter Mandelson in his role as business secretary. It is quite complicated. In fact, a lot of lawyers believe it's a not very well defined case, or not a very well defined offence at all, and the government is in the process of replacing it. But this is what Peter Mandelson is being investigated for, and were we to get to a prosecution and a conviction, a jail sentence is not out of the question. We are, however, a long way from that, not least because we haven't heard from Peter Mandelson himself as to what his side of this story is.
Carl, a remarkable turn of events for now. Thank you very much indeed. Well, if that's the potential criminal investigation, there's still a lot of politics in this, and it's potentially very toxic for Keir Starmer, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the biggest political scandals of our lifetime. I mean, even if in the end he doesn't, Peter Mandelson, face criminal charges, if he also, I mean, there's another risk that there'll be an investigation by the financial regulator, the Financial Conduct Authority, because much of what appears to have been passed on looks like market abuse. So the jeopardy is very high for Mandelson, and indeed for anybody who received information from Epstein. But if we just drill down, I mean, here we have, there are thousands of communications in this trove that the US government have received, thousands involving Mandelson and Epstein. And what it shows is an astonishingly close relationship over years in which Mandelson funneled the most confidential information to a sex criminal, a paedophile. Just when you just say those words, you realise how astonishing and mind-blowing it is. Terrible for Mandelson, and let's therefore think about who he is. He is one of the most influential figures within the Labour Party over the last 30 years. Very few others as associated with the Labour Party as he is. So incredibly damaging for the reputation of the Labour Party. I would argue potentially as damaging, for example, as Partygate. Boris Johnson coronavirus debacle has been to the Conservative Party. As Keir Starmer himself told Cabinet today, it also just undermines confidence in politicians in general. It reinforces the view of millions of people watching out there that all politicians are at it. And then finally, the point that you made, right? Many people said to Keir Starmer when he was thinking of appointing Peter Mandelson as his ambassador, this will end in tears. Appointing Peter Mandelson never ends well. And yet, Keir Starmer went ahead and made this controversial appointment. And therefore, I'm afraid, for Keir Starmer himself, his own reputation very severely damaged, despite the fact that his defence is, I didn't know this stuff.
OK, Robert, many twists and turns to come, one would think, but thank you very much indeed. Now, the revelations from the latest huge release.
Oh, hey team, big pregame today. I mean, isn't every football event kind of a big game? I'm here to share that Marriott Bonvoy is...
It's hard to know who will be more appalled about the double header in Impact.
And he said that he went out to New York for final cutting of contact with Jeffrey Epstein. I think he said that was a visit in December 2010, but that was...
The honourable thing to do.
Yeah, the honourable thing to do, but that was after.
Yeah, but he was friends with him after. I mean, that was the point.
Exactly right.
If a brother...
This is Pegasus. Fly to new adventures with smart fares.
Well, Emily Maitlis, co-host of Global's podcast News Agents, is here. Well, I mean, he's taken his opportunity, hasn't he, to put the boot in there?
I do think he makes a good point, though, actually. I mean, a leopard doesn't really change its spots. And, if you're our age, you've lived through 3 Mandelson resignations already. And all of them were of a very similar ilk. It was all about money, loans, and that proximity to power. Yeah. It was wanting to live a lifestyle that you couldn't afford without somebody else's help, essentially. And I think that in terms of whether it sort of reflects badly on Starmer, look, there's no question it was a mistake to appoint him, and there were plenty of people around him who were telling him it was a mistake. And I can't help feeling that you put a few more women in your circle of advisors, sort of sharp ears, who would be able to say, honestly, you don't need to look very far to get a nasty feeling of this. There is a nasty smell to all this. Like, don't do it. Don't start trying to appease Trump at this point. That's not what this is about. Just go with your gut feeling of what is right, and that didn't happen. But I think the extent of what happened was of what we now know, and these are obviously allegations at the moment, and they are, there are no charges, there are no convictions, but the extent of what we've now learned is so beyond anyone's imagination. I mean, this is, I would say, probably one of the biggest political corruption scandals we've ever seen in our lifetime.
Well, Keir Starmer described it in the cabinet meeting this morning as gobsmacking.
Yeah, I mean, if this were somebody operating within a company, you'd call it insider trading. Within a government, what does that look like? I mean, I want to reach for a word that sounds more like treason, right? Because this was, and you provided some of that context just before to your
I'm worried
last
about
listener.
using the word traitor, but I can't see any way around it.
I think it's slightly, I mean, now even traitor is a sort of thing of fun, but there is something of the panto villain in all this, isn't there? You know, that at the heart of the financial crash, when the country was on its knees, when the economy was on its knees, when we were trying desperately to work out this country's way forward through the financial crash, Peter Mandelson was, according to these emails, and if they are proved to be right, he was forwarding highly confidential government information within seconds to somebody who was not working with our country's interests at
While
heart.
people like my previous caller, James, were trying not to go bankrupt.
That's the point. So do you remember what it felt like? The visceral hatred, frankly, of the banks and bankers, and Fred Goodwin was being pursued for his role in the RBS and the collapse. Alistair Darling had literally become a bank manager. He'd nationalised the banks, you know. So we were sitting there going, how on earth did the banks land us in this absolutely terrifying, terrible mess?
And Peter Mandelson's helping them out
Peter
over the phone.
Mandelson is trying to make sure that bankers' bonuses aren't cut too much, you know, and it comes on top of other things. That 500 billion euro bailout. Why was Epstein told about that before we were?
The shape of our economy generally.
Resignation. Why was Epstein told about that before we were? The tunnels, the secret tunnels that lead through passages in bits of our government. Why was Epstein told about that before people in the country were? That's the bit that sort of, honestly,
sticks in the craw.
It beggars belief, doesn't it?
It does. I got some breaking news here that I know you'll be interested in. Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, formerly Prince Andrew, has been reported to the police following allegations he was involved in trafficking a woman to the UK for sex. It is alleged that Andrew was involved in bringing the woman to the UK for the purposes of sexual exploitation in 2010. After the latest release of the Epstein files, as you'll know this, a second woman came forward alleging that she was sent to the UK by the convicted sex offender and financier. That is a big move. It's a big moment. We had Prince Edward earlier today saying we can't forget the victims in all of this. Your thoughts after that breaking news?
The speed at which things are happening now is quite something, isn't it? I mean, this morning we had Starmer Cabinet Office reporting those Mandelson files, essentially, to the police. We've had news that Keir Starmer wants to strip Mandelson of his title, his peerage, as quickly as possible. Now we've had Andrew essentially being investigated by the police. Now, when he sat down with me, Sheila, that was more than 6 years ago. So in a way, you're kind of thinking, what took you so long?
Yeah.
Like, why have we been here for this long? But it feels like what is happening now is that evidence is coming from the Epstein files, from corroborated testimony, from witnesses, one of whom I don't think we'd heard of before. And I guess it is becoming harder to ignore the sort of the massive evidence now in terms of what the police should be doing.
It won't surprise you this. The campaign group Republic made the report to the police, which they obviously have to respond to.
So, yeah, I mean, look, Republic is a Republican group, an anti-monarchy group who think that, you know, we'd be better off without the monarchy. So I guess in a way you have to say, well, they would do that, wouldn't they? It is in their interests of the campaign to think that the country would be better off without a monarchy. But I think there will be a lot of people who don't necessarily sit on the Republican side, but still think that actually,
that's appropriate.
Well, they want justice to be done, right? And we haven't mentioned the victims in this yet, but we should, and we need to. And if what this means is that a woman who has put her life on the line, and actually in the case of Virginia Giuffre, that was literally true. Yeah. She's no longer with us. She took her own life in April after, you know, a pretty horrendous childhood and much of her adult life as well.
Keep your hair in the game with L'Oréal Paris Elvive Growth Booster, the official shampoo of Arsenal.
If she has put her life on the line to try and see justice being done, and we are perhaps one step closer to seeing justice being done, to an investigation at least, then I don't think that can be a bad thing. I think that is where we should be right now.
And I'm conscious as well, I don't know whether you've noticed it, but I'm conscious of the very, the speed with which the energy around the Mandelson corruption story came in a flash. When it comes to women and girls, you know, when there were girls saying I was raped by some of these men, people aren't so keen to really get into the weeds and look at it, are they? It's the politics, yes, but the abuse of victims, allegedly, no.
Look, it won't surprise you to know that I was up until about 2, as I bet you probably were, just going through all the Epstein files. And the FBI testimony is really horrific. I mean, it is really horrific. I didn't sleep very much after 2 o'clock. And what we have to try and explain to people who may be going through the stuff themselves is this is sort of the first time that we are seeing witness statements
about what happened to them and their bodies.
What happened to them and their bodies, and how scared they were, and how threatened they were, and how
powerless in that moment.
Powerless to actually even to leave, because quite often they were threatened with people saying, we know where you live, we'll come and get you, we can end your life. So we are reading those testaments for the first time, and obviously there'll be some people who say, oh well, how do we know it wasn't made up? How do we know it wasn't consensual? How do we know that if they were being paid,
she went there, didn't she?
She went there, didn't she? And as ever with sexual crime, it is so much harder to prove than the stuff that has a clear email trail to it, which can be corroborated, not least in the Chancellor's own memoirs, which some of the Mandelson stuff is.
And in the case of Peter Mandelson, your own private email and BlackBerry,
I mean, literally, you're doing it on your BT, email yourself. But what I would say is, if the release of the Epstein files now starts a conversation and makes us relook at some of the FBI witness statements and say, do you know what? I don't think those were taken seriously 20 years ago, but they can be taken seriously now, and we should still be taking them seriously. We should start looking at these with fresh eyes and saying, right, who is still out there that we need to talk to, that we need to investigate.
Justice in whatever form that comes.
Absolutely right.
Because the legal jeopardy is probably passed for some people, but not all by any means.
I don't think so. I mean, well, it depends. I mean, as an outside reader, I'm seeing names in there who I know have denied wrongdoing, and I know who have told us that they've broken up all further contact with Epstein, who clearly didn't, who clearly went back.
One particular one that we know of, Prince Andrew said it, didn't he?
Well, Andrew has been proven to have lied. But honestly, Sheila, last night I found 5 more men who had all said that they had broken off any contact with Epstein and clearly hadn't. And many of them have denied wrongdoing, and I would suggest that there is plenty of room for further investigation into some of those people.
And a brief word on the Clintons before you...
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, because I thought that was going to be today's bombshell. How old-fashioned am I?
I've had 5 bombshells.
Exactly. You just come on air and it all happens. Both Hillary and Bill have agreed to testify to Congress about the Epstein files. To put this in context, when Bill Clinton was president, he invited Epstein to the White House about 17 times. He went on his plane many times, not ever proven to have been on Epstein Island, and he denies all wrongdoing and all allegations of sexual abuse. So obviously the fact that you appear in the files does not indicate wrongdoings. I'm sure you've said to your listeners like many times already today. But there was a lot of pressure coming on them to testify, and they were resisting it because they thought it was Donald Trump trying to essentially turn the page and change the subject, and they called it lawfare. In other words, he was trying to sort of generate something that felt political to put them on the stand instead of him. And those around them have clearly said, you've got nothing to hide. If you did nothing wrong, you weren't on the island. We know you were on the jet anyway, because there were trips to Africa, there were trips, to sort of Clinton sort of causes, if you like, after he left office. The pictures are all there. You might as well have the moral high ground, because if Democrats are going, if former presidents are going, I think it's the first time since Gerald Ford, I want to say like 83, since a former president has gone before Congress to testify. But if they can do it, then they have the power and the high ground to be able to say, right, why aren't you doing it, Trump?
Yeah, or indeed...
Or anyone else.
Here in our country, to Andrew as well. Thank you very much, Emily, host of the Newsagents podcast, co-host, I should say, shouldn't I? For the others, for the boys too.
My parents are very happy lately. I bought them a pair of smart Zoom reading glasses. They no longer need